Hey guys, Dilby here, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the sound of Iglesias, Rsquared, Latmun, those kind of dudes that are making this really cool tech house, deep tech that has a really kind of 80s vibe, especially Rsquared has a really 80s kind of inspiration vibe to it. It's really fun, energetic, bouncy music, usually up in the kind of 126 to 130 BPM range. If you like the track that's playing at the moment, it's one of mine that's out now on Steve Bugg's label Sublease. It's actually #1 on TrackSource Minimal Deep Tech at the moment. There's a link in the description if you want to go and grab yourself a copy. Funny story, when I was going to make this video, I was looking for reference tracks and I thought I'd check my promos to see if there was anything new from any of these guys coming up. I searched for Rsquared in my emails and realized that they had actually subscribed to my Patreon in February. So how crazy is that? Now we're making a video on them. Speaking of Patreon, it's one of the best ways that you can support the channel and make sure I keep bringing you these videos every week. As always, there's a link in the description to Patreon where you can go and sign up and also grab the project files from this video. Now let's jump into Ableton and get this thing going. Alright, so here we are inside Ableton, and this is the project that I've put together in the style of Rsquared, Iglesias, Latmun, you know, these dudes. If I'm perfectly honest, I actually used a couple of reference tracks from Rsquared. The other guys are in the title for clickbait. They're more established, so it probably brings more people to the video. That's the game we're playing. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in this, and some of it's been covered on the channel before. So for the drums, for example, I'm just going to kind of breeze through most of them, unless there's something that we're doing particularly interesting stuff on. There's quite a few synths and some cool stuff going on, so let's just jump in and get going. So we've got a kick. It's made up of 2 layers. Very thumpy. The main kick is one from East End Dubs. I don't know if I like it personally, but I think it kind of fits the style. It's quite aggressive. And then I've got a top on here, which is more like a drum machine kind of sound, like an 80s, like a Lin drum or something like that. So together, solid. Okay, moving on. We've got claps. No, we don't. We've got snares. One of the signatures of these guys is that they use snares. Big 80s kind of synthwave or disco sounding snares. So this one I got from a really cool pack that I've had for quite a while from Wave Alchemy called Drum Tools, and you can see it's called Dirty 80s. So this is what it sounds like. Big. And then I've just taken off a little bit of the top. It's got some kind of white noise or something on it, and then pulled out some of the low mids. We've got a snare fill, which is another one from the same pack, just happening at the end of every 4 bars. So together with the main snare. I've got this snare groove. So this is happening at the end of every 2nd bar, and then at the end of every 8th bar, there's a little bit more of a fill. So I'll play those snares with the kick. And we've even got a clap groove kind of thing going in here. Just to add something different, you know, texture. But yeah, the kind of snare grooves and rolls and fills are like a big part of their sound. But especially having that big snare on the every 2nd offbeat, where I would normally put a clap. So very cool stuff. Checking out the hats, we've got an open hat, just doing what an open hat does. Nothing groundbreaking there, just playing on the offbeats. Sounds like maybe a 909 or something. Also from East End Dubs. Then we've got this closed 909 hat. Just doing a very classic pattern. Quiet, quiet, loud, quiet. Just add some groove in a like really classic analog drum machine house techno kind of way. We've got this top loop, which I'll come back to. Closed hat, which is just a bit more groovy kind of thing. You can see playing some more swung notes. Almost sounds like the same pattern as a snare roll or something might be. Let's turn all the stuff off, and this is where we're at. So you can see all these layers of drums are starting to add quite a lot of pace already. Let's turn that top loop off. Oh, sorry, we've also got a tambourine here, just playing this pattern, just kind of adding some fills. You can hear that's a drum machine tambourine. So then this top loop, this is what it sounds like. nice housey stuff. Quite tough, kind of tech housey, I guess. Then I've got the glue compressor, which is really, really squashing it. Let's turn the EQ off. And then I'm taking out the highs and the low mids just to kind of make it a bit more subtle. And I've got it turned down very low. This is really kind of adding some substance to the drums. In my opinion, this is a pretty good way to use top loops, to kind of write your main drums and then use them to kind of fill out and give some body to the rest of the drums and some depth. So you can hear we're really not relying on that top loop. It's just adding a bit more texture and a bit more depth. Now let's look at the percussion. We've got this percussion loop, and the original sounds like this. Cool, nice Latin kind of groove. Now I'm using the transient shaping here and pulling it back quite a lot. There's just tightening up the envelopes, taking out the lows and the highs, then cranking up some overdrive. We're using this live Corpus device, which is like a drum transient synthesizer kind of thing. It's quite cool. I've never really used it much. I'll just show you how this processing sounds. So that's just with the transients pulled in, then some overdrive, just thickening it up a bit. And then this gives like a really interesting kind of glitchy texture to the drums. It brings out some of the kind of mid-range tones. You can hear those kind of pitch bendy sounds. It's really cool. Glue compressor just to control the dynamics. And an LFO tool. So in a similar way to the top loop, it's kind of just adding some depth and some groove. I've got this rim, which is playing this pattern here, nothing crazy. Turn that percussion off. So that's what it sounds like. Now, got another rim. Probably say that's a snare. So you can hear all these kind of 16th note percussion, snares, hats, everything's just kind of like doing call and response. I really just kind of threw this stuff in here, and the important thing is just to kind of space things out. So they're playing one, then the other, sticking them to the 16ths and creating these patterns that change a little bit over 2, 4, 6, 8 bars, something like that. You'll really notice that in the next one, which is this drum glitch. So what have I got here? I've got a few sounds in a drum rack, a rim, open hat, shaker, percussion sound, and a snare, and then I'm putting it through Tantra and just taking away the lows and the highs. Let's turn off Tantra and I can show you how it sounds. Cool. Now with Tantra, so you can hear there, Tantra changes it up quite a lot. That's got a preset on it called Sequence Bottom Layer. Yeah, works pretty well. You can hear there when I put this into the groove, it really just kind of adds a bit of depth and craziness. And then because of the way that I've placed the elements against like the snares and the rims and stuff, it gives this kind of texture and glitchiness that's also doing call and response with some of the other percussion elements. So really cool drums, and honestly pretty fun to make. A lot more drums than I normally put into the tracks on these videos, but it just felt like it needed it. Let's have a look at the bass. So we've got 2 layers to the bass. Now the interesting thing about the bass is how I made it. I got a pattern from this Sting 64 pattern generator and just recorded the MIDI. And then I just messed around with the MIDI just to kind of ease some of the things into place. This is what we've got in the sub. So it's just playing an audio sample from East End Dubs, a little bit of processing. This is the MIDI. Together with the other stuff. So, I mean, I didn't write this. I basically used the Sting 64 and recorded the MIDI and got a bunch of patterns and then decided which one I liked. So you can see here, there's a bunch of MIDI patterns here. This is the one that I went to, the refined one, consolidated. Let me show you what the Sting 64 kind of does. If I turn it on, okay, that's way too low. Right, yeah, I transposed the notes around because it was the Sting 64 puts them out way lower, and then this audio sample was a bass note. So there we go. Let's play that with the kick. And then we just hit the smiley face to get a new pattern. Now just turn that off so that we can tell that it's coming through in the Sting. And if we want, we can have a 32. So I know a lot of guys in tech house these days are using this, so get amongst it. Now this just completely randomizes the sounds. So I've got this chord device turned on, which is going to put it back into D minor, which is the scale of the track. So that's really important. All right. Now I've got this top bass. I don't know, I made it and I wasn't really sure if I needed it. So it's quite low in the mix, but it does help the bass cut through a little bit. So that's just another audio sound, and then I've got like loads of processing on it just to kind of, yeah, make something that cuts through a little bit more. Let's take a listen to it in context, with and without. I didn't quite get it to sound the way I wanted. Maybe using a different source sound or a different kind of amount of saturation and stuff could have got it right. It's doing what I want it to do, which is to have the bass kind of stick out and be audible in the mix a bit more than it was, but the sound isn't quite perfect. So yeah, you win some, you lose some. Let's take a look at some of these vocal bits. We'll turn off the main vocal and the glitch, but we've got some bits that are happening with the groove. So they're kind of really integral to the parts that we've built up already. So we've got this breath. So we've got a couple of little vocal chops that are kind of happening with the groove. And they're almost like percussion, but just adding different texture. This was something I noticed Rsquared were doing quite a bit in their tracks. And it really helps to kind of humanize the beat, make the groove and everything really recognizable, and add some kind of depth and texture and originality. Really cool trick. So this is what we got. And yeah, that's what we've got for the groove. So now let's have a look at the rest of the vocals. We've got this ooh, which is just a cheeky wee female vocal that I felt like fit with the playful mood of the track. In the effects, we've only got one crash, so I'll just turn it on. Cool, and then the main vocal here, these vocal glitches. So the main vocal goes like this. Then I just used Tantra again to create these glitches with the end of this bit of the vocal that says move. So that's just this vocal here. I just added it a couple of times, put Tantra on it. So it kind of makes it a call and response type thing. Just adds a bit of difference, a bit of texture. Yeah, I like it. And then there's a longer part of the vocal that plays in the break. So the vocal sounds objectively pretty crap. I've done that somewhat on purpose. I just added a bunch of processing to help it stick out of the mix. It's not a pop record, you know, it doesn't really matter. A lot of the vocals that Rsquared actually use are from 80s records. So they definitely have like artifacts and weird stuff going on, because some of them, like, they haven't got the acapella. They've maybe used like USEAAA or something. One of those things that can isolate stems from a track, or just doing it the old-fashioned way with EQ. But there's definitely artifacts and things in a lot of the vocals they use, so it sounds fine, and that's the main thing. It definitely gives it a vibe. So that's the vocals. We already looked at the effects, it's just a crash, and let's have a look at the melodic elements. This was really fun, actually. So I'll just turn these all off. I was supposed to record this video a few hours ago, and I went down a rabbit hole making different melodic elements, and yeah, ended up with a bunch of stuff. I didn't know if it was all perfect, but I was just having so much fun, so I just kept going. We've got the string stab, which is like I don't know, it must be from one of those synths that plays samples, because it's super recognizable. I just found it on Loop Cloud, part of a loop, as you can see here. Kind of like a pizzicato string stab. I've added a bit of reverb and delay, so it kind of works as a fill. Just really helps to add some energy and helps with the playful kind of mood of the track. Now I've got this acid riff. Where's the MIDI? So here's the MIDI, very simple stuff, just goes up and down. Let's take a listen. So very nice, really simple patch in analog. And the thing that's giving it that acid sound is the filter with a bunch of resonance. And just to keep it kind of changing up, as you hear, it wasn't playing the same every time. I've used these LFOs and put one on the filter frequency and one on the resonance and just messed them up a bit. So those are constantly moving, and they're constantly moving in relation to one another. So it just kind of sounds different the whole time. And I've got this delay, which is you'll see these two notes here, did it. Now the delay makes these play quieter here. It sounds pretty cool. Without it, it sounds a bit less interesting. So it could work. Now, we've got these 80s chords. So for this, I used a brass sound from the Korg M1, and I'll freeze this if anyone wants to grab it in the project files from Patreon. That's what they sound like. So I made actually a bunch of chords, or like a longer riff, and didn't end up using it because it was just a bit over the top, but I'll play it and see what you think. Maybe with the bass and the kick for some context. I don't compose music, I produce house music, you know. I know my way around a keyboard okay, and I'm pretty familiar with like the basic music theory, but please someone let me know in the comments why having this note in the chord made it sound really 80s. Like if I put it here, it doesn't sound as 80s. Just something about that dissonance on the first chord sounds, I don't know, it's working for me. So yeah, I don't know why it works or not. Anyway, I'm using this as kind of like something on the drops. Basically just chopped up the MIDI and used it as a fill. So it's kind of almost like sampled it. So a really cool effect that we've got going on here is this vibrato, and it gives it a really 80s sound without it. So it's this kind of like wavy, pitch wavy kind of sound. Now the reason I've got this shaper here, because I don't want the vibrato to happen right at the attack of the sound. I want it to kind of come in, and this was how I figured I could make that happen. So if I turn it up and kind of accentuate the effect, and if I unmap it, that's fine. Turn off the chorus. So it's fine, but it's not quite as cool as it is with it, in my opinion anyway. So here it is. Just makes me feel like I'm on the set of Miami Vice or something. Then I've got this Juno Arp, which is just an arpeggio scale that I played. Well, I drew it, let's be honest. So often arpeggios are playing 16ths, and this is playing 8ths, and I just extended them out a little bit longer. It's just a preset from Wavetable. I've got a delay on it, chorus. I'm automating the highs on this EQ. And I've got this bass clef easy fadeaway rack, which is just kind of pulling it away at the end. And that is because the vocal is playing and it was kind of interfering, clashing. So that was just a way to control it. So I tried this actually with a 16th pattern. Is this it? Yeah, and it just didn't sound right. But maybe better to give it some context. Sounds a bit too chaotic. Just fits more with the vibe that I'm going for with the track, I think. And then I've got this really cool pad riser, which is just a sample I found from Loopmasters. I mean, I guess I could probably recreate something similar to it, but the sample exists, so why not use it? Super nice sound and fits really well in this track. Cool stuff. The only other thing that happens just before the drop there is I've got a couple of different snare patterns here, just making a bigger fill. Not too many, no effects going on. You could probably use them, but I didn't feel that was like integral to making this style of track. If you're a Patreon, you can download these project files now. If you're not and you want the project files, jump over to Patreon. There's a link in the description. There's the files for all of my tutorial videos. I don't know, there must be like 50 or 100 project files on there now. It's pretty crazy. So enjoy that. Now let's listen through this track from the start. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments, did I get the sound? I think I got pretty close. If you like these videos in the style of how to sound like, then check out this playlist. There's heaps of top stuff there. Well, that's it from me today. We'll catch you next time. Peace.